So I want to make this video to get you all better prepared for tomorrow's quiz. You could watch this again, hopefully at home, when you're studying tonight. It is Thursday. Tomorrow is the quiz on Friday. Okay, so what's going to be on the quiz? Tomorrow's quiz is going to be on two sections and two sections only. One where you have a scatter plot where I give you data, you graph the points, kind of like this worksheet we did in class, I believe, yesterday. So on this problem, make a scatter plot. So you have this blank graph. You take all these XY values and you plot them. 1, 1, 1, 1. 3, 5, 3, 5. So you're going to get 1 point for that. Just by plotting these dots right here on the XY plane, you get points for plotting the points on the XY plane. You get another point for drawing a line, which is called the line that best fits, that goes through most of the points. Right? As long as you're not like totally crooked off of the points, you'll get the point right there. But the fun part comes in when you pick 2 points to represent this line. And on this one, we picked the first one and the last one. I mean, the video's there. You could scroll down on Edmodo and you'll be able to find this exact video explaining everything about this question. But ultimately, you're going to have to do all of this work. Find the slope. Use your slope and a point to plug it into point slope form, and then change your point slope form to slope intercept form. And that you get another point for having this slope intercept form equation that's called the line that best fits. And this line that best fits could be used to make predictions. Like down here you had a missing value of 10. All you have to do is plug in the input 10 right here. 2 times 10 is 20, minus 1 is 19, and you'll get the answer right there. So it's that easy. There's already a video on this. This is 6 points on tomorrow's quiz, or 5 points on tomorrow's quiz. And that's half of the quiz. Super easy. Now the other half comes from the latest section, 4.7, which is inverses. Review inverses by looking at the worksheet I just gave you. So this whole first half is super easy. If I give you an XY table and I tell you to give me the inverse of the data, all you're going to do is switch the coordinate values and make it a -1 and a -9. Make it a -4 and a -7. Make it a -7 and a -5. Those are the inverse of each of these coordinates. All you're doing is switching the x and the y. So it's that easy. And I'm not even going to give you a question like 1, 2, or 3, but maybe 4, 5, or 6, yeah, because those are at the very least less. I mean, it's like a free point, right? So if I ask you for the inverse of the data set on 4, you're going to give me the coordinate 2, -3. You're going to give me the coordinate 8, -1. Because remember, the inverse is simply switching x and y. Okay? So that's too easy. I'm not going to waste any more time on that. However, we are going to have some where I give you the graph like this guy, and I tell you to find the inverse. Okay? So what I recommend is to look at the line. How many points do you need for a line, really, to draw it? 2 points. So I say look at 2 points that you could see clearly. Like right here, it's not at a nice point, not at a nice point. Here's a nice point, so let's look at this point for sure. And if we keep looking, none of these are nice except for this one right on the edge, okay? Or maybe this one over here right on the edge. So we have 3 points. You only really need 2. Now, remember, the inverse is simply switching x and y. So if you want to, go ahead and name these coordinates. This one that's way on the edge is actually 10, 0. This one over here, way on the edge, is -10, -8. And this one in the middle is 0, -4. So what you need to do is switch all the x and y's, and then just plot those points and then draw your line. Yes. So I don't know, if you don't want to get confused, just write your coordinates over right here on the side before even graphing them, and take a look at your first one right here. This is a -10, -8. You're going to switch it to a -8, -10. So let's go to -8, -10. -8 on the x and -10 on the y. You end up with this dot right here. Let's look at the next one. This next one says 0, -4. If we switch it, it's going to say -4, 0. So let's go to the coordinate negative 4, 0. Negative 4, 0 is right here. Let's put a dot right there. And let's go for the last one. This last one, 10, 0 becomes 0, 10. And when you graph 0, 10, 0 on the x, 10 on the y, it's way up here on the edge. So we have those three dots. Just go ahead and draw it. You're actually going to have to draw it right on the graph on tomorrow's quiz also, okay? And that's your answer. This is what I'm going to be looking for, this blue line right here. I mean, of course, you don't have to do it in blue. This one's going to be given to you. This is the answer that I'm looking for. You got it? Should we try another one? Or are we good? We're good? You sure? Okay. So there's going to be probably like 2 of these guys on tomorrow's quiz. And of course, we have the main part of the quiz here where you have to find the inverse of an actual function. So let's pick one. Which one would you like to see? Or should we just start basic with 11? All right. So the first thing to do is f of x is really what? What's f of x? It's really y. So let's first just write it with the y so we don't get confused. Now, the actual first step is to, anybody? Switch x and y. So let's switch x and y. We're going to have a x equals 8y minus 5. So nothing else changes. You don't move. I mean, when I say switch x and y, I'm literally talking erase that y, make it an x, erase this x, make it a y. See, there it is. Nothing else changed. The 8 didn't move, nothing else changed. So that's the first step, switch x and y. And the second step and final step is what? Solving for y. That's your last step right there. Okay, so we have our equation right here. Let's solve for y. Let's get the y by itself. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. Okay, so if I did go plus 5 and plus 5, I know this is kind of ugly, but imagine that, minus 5 and this plus 5, it's going to cancel out, right? And over here, this plus 5 and the x, you can't really do that, so you're going to have to rewrite it. It's going to become x plus 5. Let me write that down, x plus 5. And of course, we have the equal sign, and we have the 8y. That is an ugly equal sign. Let me change that. There you go. So for my final step here, I need to get y by itself. So I'm going to divide by 8. Divide by 8. Now, if you leave it like that, that's fine. Especially because the x is not divisible by 8 or the 5 is not divisible by 8. But if you want to separate the 8, go for it. I mean, I think it's even better if you separate it. So the final answer would be y equals, because the 8's cancel, y is by itself. And if you want to separate the 8, you have an invisible 1 in front of the x. So it'll actually be 1 over 8 with an x, and then plus 5 over 8. This is a great answer. But if you happen to leave it together with the 8 underneath, that's fine also. Y equals x plus 5 over 8. I guess if you leave it like that, I'll give you full credit anyway. Okay? But sometimes it's better to split it because you might have let's say if you had an x plus 8 right here, that would be awesome if you split it because 8 divided by 8 could change to 1. So it's a good idea to split it. But if you leave it like this, it's okay. Let's try 13. So we already know that f of x is really just y. If you want, go ahead and scratch it out, right? Change to a y. And what we need to do is switch x and y and then solve for y. So the first thing to do is to switch x and y. So when I switch x and y, it'll actually be x equals instead of y equals. It's still 3/4, but instead of x, it's now a y plus 9. Okay, so that's switch x and y. That's the first step. Now the second step is to actually solve for y. So we are solving for y here. We need to get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 9, cancel it out, subtract 9. X take away 9 is exactly that. So let me rewrite this thing. X take away 9 equals 3/4 y. I still need to get y by itself. I could get rid of the 3/4 by multiplying by the reciprocal 4/3, or you could do one thing at a time. Multiply by 4, multiply by 4, multiply by 4, and you're going to have a new equation. And the new equation says 4x minus 36 equals, the 4's cancel, you get a 3y. You almost have y by itself. Your final step would be to divide by 3, and divide by 3. Now right here, it's a good idea to divide everything by 3 because 36 is divisible by 3. So your final answer will be y by itself equals 4 divided by 3 stays 4/3 with an x. 36 divided by 3 happens to be negative 12. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the inverse function of the original. So this is pretty much it of what we're going to see on the quiz. Okay, of course there's going to be more. And also make sure that the answers on the back of your worksheet are in slope-intercept form. They might not have changed them completely to slope-intercept form, so you might have to distribute to be able to get these answers. Anyway, it's going to be a short quiz. It's going to be half of the class. Now the second half of the class, you're going to have an retake, or not retake, but fix your last test grade. How's that? Well, we're going to actually have a retake. So here's our test from last week, and I'm going to chop this down in half. It's 20 questions. I'm going to chop it down to 10 questions. So if you already got an A, you don't have to worry about this second part. But if you got a bad grade, you might as well understand how to do this stuff. So let's look at number 1. It says write the equation in slope-intercept form. Okay? So what do we need? We need a slope. We need a y-intercept. And the slope, you could clearly see from here to here is up 1, 2, 3 over 1. So the slope is 3 over 1, which is just 3. And the b value happens to be at negative 1. You can see that right there. So your y equals mx plus b equation is y equals 3x minus 1. Everybody should get that right, okay? So it's going to be almost identical to last week's quiz, so please review last week's quiz. Right here, 3 and 4. It says, write an equation in point-slope form of the line that passes through each point with the given slope, okay? So like, let's look at number 4 here. They give you a point, x1, y1. They give you a slope. There it is. So you could write it in point-slope form. So this is point-slope form. All you do is plug in your x1, y1 values. So you're going to have y minus y1, which happens to be 5, equals m. We said m was negative 2/5. So you have negative 2/5, parentheses, x minus x1 happens to be negative 8. So the minus minus has to change to plus plus. And ladies and gentlemen, that's your answer right there. Okay? So this is easy stuff. If you got a bad grade, watch this video again, study, and you'll do fine. This next question, it says write an equation in standard form. Okay, we know what standard form is. Standard form, in case you forgot, is ax plus by equals c. In other words, you don't want any fractions, you don't want any decimals, and you want the x's and the y's on the left side of your equal sign. So the very first thing I would do is get rid of the fraction. I would multiply this by 4, multiply the 2 times 4 and the y times 4. So my new equation so far will be 4y plus 8 equals, the 4's cancel, so you have a negative 3, parenthesis x plus 1. So there are no more fractions. So far, so great. Next thing to do would be to get rid of those parentheses by distributing the minus 3. So you have negative 3x minus 3. Whoa, I put a 1. Negative 3x minus 3. And you still have the equal sign. You still have the 4y plus 8. I'm running out of space here. So next thing I need to do is move this negative 3x to the left side and move the 8 to the right side by doing the opposite. So the opposite of minus 3x would be to go plus 3x and plus 3x over here. So far I'll have 3x, and let me just rewrite it, plus 4y plus 8 equals negative 3. And then I'm going to have to move the 8 to the other side by subtracting 8 and subtracting 8. So my final standard form answer will be 3x plus 4y equals negative 11. And that's standard form.